So first thing we'll do is we want to go to the import section right here. Alright, and here we have the import data screen, and the first subsection here is called choose delimiter or file type, and it's here that we can uh, tell TradeLogger the file that we're going to be bringing in is a comma delimited file, or it's a tab delimited file, or it's a semicolon delimited file. Whatever your delimiter is, this is where you tell TradeLogger to keep an eye out for the delimiter. In this case, it's comma delimited, so we check that. And there's a couple other choices here: a TradeStation log file, a TradeLogger native file, and I'll cover those in other video tutorials here. So go ahead and look on the site for those. But for now, we're just going to deal with a generic comma delimited file. Okay. So the first thing we do is we choose the delimiter that the file is going to be in, and we go ahead and open data file. Okay, so I'm going to navigate here to some data file for sample that I happen to know, and I open it. And notice when I open it now, all these columns begin to populate. All right, and what TradeLogger has done is it has found all the commas that delimits all the different fields, and then we go ahead, and then it goes ahead and just begins to populate these columns based on that. But before we can actually import anything, we have to tell TradeLogger what columns mean what. And of all the columns that are absolutely most important to TradeLogger, it is the profit and loss amounts for each trade. So we have to tell TradeLogger where, which column represents that. And we do that by using the pull down menus here. And this pull down menu, I'm above column 4, and column 4 is indeed the profit and losses of all the different trades. So I'll pull down that menu, and I will define that column as P&L. Okay, so now TradeLogger knows, oh, okay, that's the P&L amounts. And I'll go ahead and I'll ascribe the other information here. The first column looks like the date column, and so we will tell TradeLogger those are the dates. And the second column looks like the start time of the trade. Now this is optional. It's not required. If your data doesn't have the start time or the end time, that's alright. TradeLogger will still work. What TradeLogger really needs is the profit and loss amounts in the correct order. Okay, but since I've got this data here, I'll go ahead and tell it the name. And this column will be the end time, and this column here will be my position, long or short. This column here represents the instruments that I was trading. This column here, the next column over, will indicate the strategies that I was trading. And finally, this last column is the exit reasons for these trades. Now again, all of these columns are optional. The profit and loss column, though, is essential. Obviously, TradeLogger can't plot its graph without that information, so the profit and loss data has to be there. But if your data doesn't have start time and end time, or strategy or exit or that kind of thing, it's all right. TradeLogger will still work. You don't have to fill it in. You can just hit skip. You can pull down the menu and hit skip, and it won't do it. The other option that we have here at the bottom, which is comes in handy sometimes for just a little additional tweaking of your file, is sometimes your data file will have some junk in the first line, or the first 2 or 3 lines that really has nothing to do with it. And so you can check the button here to discard the first line or the first two lines or the first three lines, and TradeLogger will throw that information out. Um, Also, you can discard every other line by checking this here, or every third line, um, or turn it off completely. Uh, and the reverse order is another option here. You can click this and it will completely reverse the order of trades. Now the important thing to TradeLogger is that in order for TradeLogger to do its job, it needs to see the trades listed from the most recent trade to the most distant trade. Okay, so your most recent trade, the last trade that you just took, needs to be at the top. So if your data does not come in this way, well, you can either open your data up in Excel and sort it, but if it's just the opposite, you could easily just click the reverse order here, and TradeLogger will just reverse all this information for you. Um, but in order for TradeLogger to work, the data needs to be in the order of the most recent trade at the top on down to the most distant trade. Okay, that's very important. And then lastly, we've got this append to existing data button. If you click that, this data will be tagged on to the end of any existing data that you already have in there in order. Since we don't have any data in this particular example, this file is completely clean. We don't really need to do that. And if we don't do that, it'll just overwrite the data that's already in there. Okay, and I'll cover backing up, and I'll cover exporting your data in another tutorial here on how to back up things. But for now, we'll just go ahead and proceed along. So we've told TradeLogger what all these columns mean, and now that we've done that, we can go ahead and import our data. Okay, so now is the time we click the Import Data button, and TradeLogger will input data and go right ahead and plot it for us, as you can see right there. And we can see that we have the most recent on down. Of course, most recent is relevant depending on when you're watching this tutorial, but this data file is older, from earlier in the year, some testing and so forth. So the most recent on down, we have April 20th, and then it goes to April 19th, and on down to 18th and so forth. Okay, so that's basically a very simple overview there of how you go ahead and bring in data to TradeLogger from an outside source. And if you have any other questions or comments or great feature requests to make the whole process better and easier, please go ahead and contact me from my TradeLogger.net site through the contact link, and let me know, and I'll do my best to implement whatever great suggestions you have. So thanks so much, and check out the other tutorials here that should be coming on here pretty soon.